Problems are something people like to avoid. It's a rare person that will jump headfirst into a problem without being prodded to do so by others, like a stubborn mule. It's rarer that the person will find a simple solution without a great deal of self-investigation and the stripping away of preconceived notions. Solutions to any real problem do not come easily, and solutions are much harder to find when found knowledge and psychological defense mechanisms are between the person and solution. Right now, the United States has abundance of problems that aren't being addressed due to denial and excuse-making. Propaganda news. News organizations have become fully untrustable. When they aren't pushing news about people dying, they're pushing their political stance and trying to get people to see it their way. Opinion has therefore replaced real news coverage. This includes hyperbole and blatant lies combined with the will to cover up crimes, such as the Epstein story that was cut and the leaking of which got a reporter fired without any evidence she was even part of the leak. They willfully push polls with questionable results, such as the one leading up to the 2016 election that showed Hillary with a large lead, and also push neo-McCarthyism by fueling the Russophobia that is taking hold of people who don't actually stop and think about our own problems. The country has an increasing obesity rate, increasing OD rate, increasing suicide rate, increasing prescription drug use, increasing homelessness, declining educational standards, colleges bloated with ideology instead of learning, increasing debt load, a government that barely functions between taking money from lobbyists, all while exporting our manufacturing, along with it our real economy. See some of my other essays for more information on those subjects. And people like to think Russians could do something worse to us. Yeah, they could do worse. They could nuke us, which is the only thing remotely worse than what we're doing to ourselves. Strategic overstretch. The United States has approximately 800 military bases spread throughout approximately 80 countries, depending on the source and what people want to call a base. No nation has ever survived such strategic overstretch. The ability to be strong on all fronts does not exist. Ask the English, the Spanish, Portuguese, the Dutch, Rome. All their empires failed due to not having the resources to properly defend the territory they set up shop on, combined with confrontations with all the enemies that went after them that were created from them carving pieces of influence out of the world around them. This is made even more troublesome with the fact that many of our allies have problems with us. South Korea is tiring of the whole Korean War fiasco. Europe is tiring of our outdated thinking that says the USSR, which hasn't existed for decades, is still a problem. Iraq wants us kicked out of that country. Japan is wary of our undisciplined troops killing their citizens. We don't have the means to maintain the status quo as it is for much longer with a military that can't win a war against people in Toyotas. Not to mention the questionable dealings with militants, which always end with them turned against us and trying to bomb us. Americans have a notion that World War III will be us and our allies against some bad guy, when in reality, it's shaping up to be us and a couple satellite nations like the United Kingdom against the world, with us being the bad guy. And we will lose spectacularly if that happens, because we've turned out too many people who are so emotionally weak they're hurt by words alone and will fold like paper mache in the face of an actual fight. Calcified government. So many of the people in our federal government have been there so long it's no wonder they still talk like the USSR is a thing, because it was when they first entered office. Our governments, both at the state and federal levels, are full of people bloated on lobbyist money due to pandering to special interest groups for decades. They're so disconnected from the world and the country in general that they don't even realize that trying to say something like in Bolivia isn't a coup. It's like someone trying to say Epstein killed himself. Only people that habitually buy such nonsense on a regular basis without any thought believe it anymore. The deep state gave up trying to be secret and essentially made itself fully visible, which is the best thing about the Trump presidency that would never have happened if Hillary or Bernie had won 2016. Hillary pandered to the deep state, and Bernie pandered to people for votes. Our government still thinks people believe that they say, rather than rolling their eyes. The government still thinks we have a network of allies across the globe, rather than a few nations being bullied into allies. They still think people think they'll be able to retire one day. Of course, some people in the country still think those things, especially those who are older who want to deny the situation we're in, and those who are barely adults that swallow propaganda like it's breakfast cereal. Social Security Fund. Some people under 50 still think they'll retire. I assure you that is a joke of cosmic proportions for everyone that isn't disciplined enough to save money and pay everything they have off. And the joke is on almost everyone. Social Security Fund is running out of money. Meanwhile, we're spending billions on war machines while sending billions more to other countries to buy them as allies for a short amount of time. There's your retirement and disability. Up in smoke. Because of some bullshit commie threat that doesn't exist, except for Marxist professors on campus. Chances are those that think they'll retire will really join the ranks of the homeless, or those that work until the day they drop dead on the job, while those entirely dependent on disability will end up eating pet food like some of those already living entirely off Social Security payments, which isn't a pretty sight. I've seen it for myself in Florida. Failed education system. I won't get into how the rest of the world is ahead of us in math and science. That's so old news it's not funny. But I will point out that many colleges have reduced themselves to bastions of hooliganism and ignorance based on ideology. I won't get into the professor that wants to push Marxism or those that claim there's no biological difference between males and females, even though these are evidence of what I've said for a while now. The entire education system needs revamped, except I don't think people really understand what I mean. I mean the entire system needs reduced to fundamental basics, all ideology removed, and then rebuilt into something that benefits society instead of working against society as it's currently doing. But we certainly have hooligans running rampant on campuses because of the ignorance they're swallowing. I won't digress on how I refused to go to college due to not wanting to risk coming out stupider and with a narrower view than I entered. Because as Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, education does not make you smarter. And what we see on these campuses is proof of that. The latest demonstration of this is the protesters at Ann Coulter's Berkeley appearance yesterday. Protesting is one thing. Physically barring people from entering a building is another. That's oppression, pure and simple. Protest all you want against who you want, I could care less. But you're actively oppressing people once you try to keep them from something they have the right to go to. That falls back to the essay I wrote the other day, Freedom, a Great Lie, in which I point out the moment you say you make the rules, you're saying someone else can't, which means you become the oppressor. Argue with circle talk all day about how they're standing up for bigotry and it's their right. It doesn't matter, because they're making themselves the bigots. And if I accept their view that Coulter is a bigot for the sake of argument, it's bigots against bigots, which is called even, meaning neither has the right to claim having a higher moral ground. Not only that, but using your free speech to try taking away another person's free speech breaks the Ninth Amendment that says you can't use your rights to take away another person's rights. So forcibly keeping someone from speaking, or others from hearing them speak, is bigotry, oppression, and a violation of the Constitution. None of these problems can be sorted out and fixed until people stop denying them and pushing the blame on others. We're not special. No one is after us. No one is screwing up our society except ourselves. Why these problems have gotten to the point they have gotten is because of denial and sticking of the head in the sand so far only toes show. The Russophobia is a perfect example of it. Let's blame some other country for messing with our elections instead of admitting the person that lost laughed at a man's brutal murder and made decisions that led to the brutal death of one of our diplomats in response to Gaddafi's death. This mentality is pure denial and excuse-making, and denial and excuse-making always lead to catastrophic failures. Just go ask Boeing how it worked out for them. The only way to start turning this around is to take responsibility for our own bad decisions and the bad decisions of our government and the people that are a part of it. Nonsensical excuses aren't going to work much longer. Pushing blame on others isn't going to work much longer. Circle talk rationalization that doesn't say anything isn't going to work much longer. Shrugging and saying it'll be okay, something will get figured out, isn't going to work much longer. Until we take responsibility, I stand by the answer I gave to a direct question 2 years ago. Do you think Trump will be our last president? No, but I think the one after him could be.